So it doesn't just break the outward idols, it breaks the inward idols. And the foundation for that is even in the Arabic language, because there's a difference between sanam and wathan. And Raghib al-Isbahani says one of the sanam is formed outwardly, the wathan is the conceptualization that takes place in the mind of the idolater. So we are in a deeply idolatrous society. We're in a society of idol worshippers. And unfortunately, many Muslims have fallen into the same conceptual idols that these other people believe in. And this is part of the tragedy, because we have all of these antibodies. If we follow our deen, we have antibodies that protect us from these kufr antigens, right? If you know physiology, an antigen comes into the body, and the body has a natural immunity, and it begins to formulate these antibodies, and they will protect the body from that foreign invader. Well, we've been invaded, folks. And the amazing thing about it is, instead of fighting off the infection, we encourage it. We encourage the infection, because not only do we not allow our antibodies to develop, but we allow the antigens to proliferate until they've literally taken over the whole body. And the way that we do that is through the educational system. Because we have adopted almost wholeheartedly a kafir educational system that is deeply and grossly alien to the Islamic perspective. Could you switch the slide there? Now I also, I would just like to say this is not a bid'ah. Because the Prophet ﷺ used visuals. He once was with his Sahaba, and he drew a square on the sand, and then he drew a line, and he drew lines coming out of the sand, and he drew a line outside the square and explained that that was the ajal, and there were these lines and things like this. And so the Prophet ﷺ used that technique. So I'm not doing anything new, we're just maybe expanding on the sand. But again, you know, this is the age of sand, the silicone chip and all of these things. It's just sand. Everything comes from the desert. Now, I want to look at this hadith which Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu relates, and it's a hadith that's in Sahih al-Bukhari, and it's a deeply important hadith. All of the hadith are important, but they have obviously ranks and degrees in what the Prophet ﷺ wanted to convey to the Muslims, because there are hadiths that you can live your whole life and never have it heard, but they will not affect your worldview or your understanding, because other hadiths fulfill that function. This is one of the hadiths that's actually essential for the Muslim to understand the meaning of it. And the hadith says, كُلُّ مَوْلُودٍ وُلِدَ عَلَى الْفِطْرَةِ. Now sometimes this is mistranslated as saying every child is born a Muslim. You will see it translated. It does not say that in the Arabic language. That is a tafsir or an interpretation coming from the idea that this is deen al-fitra, that Islam is deen al-fitra, it's the deen of fitra. But in fact, the hadith says, كُلُّ مَوْلُودٍ وُلِدَ عَلَى الْفِطْرَةِ وَأَبَوَاهُ يُهَوِّدَانِهِ أَوْ يُنَصِّرَانِهِ أَوْ يُمَجِّسَانِهِ. And it is his parents who will make it a Jew, a Christian, or a Magian, a fire worshipper. Now, this hadith, first of all, gives us a very profound insight into societies and the nature of what is termed now in modern sociology, socialization. This is what they call in sociology, socialization, that people are socialized by their environments into a way of behaving, a behavioral pattern, a model of behavior that is taken solely from outside of themselves. Now, this behavioral pattern can either be congruous with the inherent nature of the human being, or it can be incongruous with it. In other words, it can be disharmonic and create turbulence in the self. If it is in harmony with it, then it's in harmony with the fitrah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has inherently made people follow, this natural normative pattern of being or behavior. Now, if you look at these four models, a healthy situation is when the child who is naturally inclined towards fitrah will be facilitated in their developmental nature, in fulfilling their nature that Allah has made them upon, by the family and the society. And this is an ideal situation in which the child is not only raised by Muslim family, Muslim parents, Muslim sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, with an Islamic worldview and an Islamic behavior, but the society at large is facilitating the tarbiyah, or the nurturing of this child. So the child is not only becoming a Muslim inside the house, but outside the house, the Islam is being confirmed. And this is Medina al-Munawwara. This is the city of the Prophet ﷺ, which is a blueprint, a model for the society in which the human being was intended to live and exist in. And that is why it is our Medina al-Fadila. It is the virtuous city. It is the city which we are supposed to look and take as our example. Now, unfortunately, there are many modern Muslims who have this idea that somehow these people, that the Prophet ﷺ was living in a primitive culture that was really just outside of the Iron Age, very simplistic life, and somehow that it's relative to the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century, but what does that have to do with us living in the 20th century? And this is part of the disease of the Muslims. That Medina al-Munawwara was the best society that has ever existed as a model for human beings. Now, the amazing thing to me is that amongst the kuffar, there are many people now talking about what they call communitarianism, which is trying to downscale cities, trying to live in small-scale communities where people can actually get to know people, and that there's a sense of belonging and community, where the virtuous qualities of human beings are literally inculcated in the inhabitants of that area. And this is really at a theoretical mode, although there have been attempts within the Western cultures of people disengaging. Unfortunately, we know that you have to have a straight blueprint in the first place for this to work. If you don't have a straight blueprint, it won't work. And that's why they are always doomed to failure ultimately. Now, you will find within the Western societies, there's a group of people, the Mennonites, the Hutterites or Hutterites, you have the Amish people, that really what they have going for them is simply that they have opted to maintain tradition and to oppose the radical impact and effect of innovation in societies. And the whole idea of bid'ah is a really important idea in Islam, the idea of an innovation and the danger of innovation in cultures, which should not be misconstrued as being an innovation for things that enhance society. But the Muslims have always been wary of any new introduction into the society. And you will see this by the fact that the first concern of the Muslims in Medina was the introduction of the lavatory into the house. This was one of the first concerns of the Muslims in Medina, of bringing actual bathrooms into the houses. They were concerned about that as an innovation. Now, the point being, whether it's good or bad, there's obviously benefits to it, and there's obviously things that are not beneficial. And what the Muslim does is they outweigh the maslahah and the mafsadah, the benefit and the harm. This is what we do. This is the basis of our deen. The deen is based on jalb al-maslahah wa dar' al-mafsadah. The whole of Sharia can be reduced to those two principles, and if you understand them, then you understand the point of Islam. The point of Islam is to bring benefit to human beings and to avoid harm. It's called awamir wa nawahi. Ittiba' al-awamir wa ijtinab al-nawahi. That is the whole foundation of Islam. Now, I was a few weeks back talking, somebody asked me a question, and I said, well, you need to ask the scholars about that, the people of fatwa. And somebody in the audience said, what about tahkim al-aql? What about just using our intellects? And I said, tahkim al-aql lil-uqala. The authority of the intellect is for the people of intellect. And obviously, not everybody is an aqil. Because the Quran asked the question, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ? Don't you use your brains? And I'm almost of the opinion that the brain has become a fastidial organ. Like in evolution, they say that an organ that's not used disappears, which really is a proof against evolution, because the brain hasn't been used for a very long time and it's still around. So if you go to the next stage here, this is a confused child, and the degree of confusion depends on the degree of kufr in the society, because kufr is by degrees.